What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com, and I promised you guys last night after I made my video on Orlando Brown and Frank Clark that I would be recording another video either that night or today about all the Kansas City Chiefs free agents. We're doing a keeper cut. We're going all the way down the list of all the Kansas City Chiefs and pending free agents, and I'm going to tell you my opinion on every single one of them and what I think the Chiefs should do and what I think will happen. I'm not going to waste any time getting into this list because we got a lot of names to go over, but I will say I'm going to start with Orlando Brown and Frank Clark. I made a video on both of them yesterday and what I think is going to happen with them and how I think that whole thing ended up. And I gave a really in-depth analysis on both of those moves. So I'm just going to give you guys a quick note on both of them here because I know a lot of you already watched that video. And so I don't want those people to have to listen to me all over again. But Orlando Brown, the Chiefs decided not to franchise tag him, which means he's most likely going to hit the open market. And one of two things is going to happen. He's either going to walk and somebody else is going to pay him, and the Chiefs will address left tackle in the draft, or the Chiefs can still work out a long-term deal with him. Now, James Palmer of NFL Network said that he thinks it's a 0% chance that the Chiefs and Brown come to an agreement. I also think Orlando Brown, though, is overestimating his market, and the Chiefs know that, so they're okay with him hitting free agency. And whatever happens, happens. They're going to be okay with it, but they didn't want to tag Orlando Brown again because they want to get out ahead in free agency, and tagging Orlando Brown kind of hinders them cap-wise because it's $20 million tied up into one guy right off the bat. My opinion on Orlando Brown, though, you guys have heard it before. I think he's a good left tackle, not a great one. We've seen now that the Chiefs can win a Super Bowl with Orlando Brown as their left tackle. They just did it. But if Brett Veach doesn't pay him the money that he wants, I'm fine with it because I can trust that. I'm good with not paying a good player, great player money. And that's what the Chiefs might have to do with Orlando Brown if they want to keep him. My main concern with letting Orlando Brown go, though, is who you're going to replace him with. Because if we're talking about a rookie, that's a big risk. I mean, this is the left tackle position. This is a position where if you don't get it right in the draft, then that's a lost season. Because, I mean, you can't win a Super Bowl without a left tackle, without a starting left tackle. Patrick Mahomes will get killed. That's a really important position. It's a big risk. Moving on from Orlando Brown when you kind of know what you have in him and you just want a Super Bowl with him. So those are my thoughts on Orlando Brown. Frank Clark. We weren't sure if he would actually become a free agent or if he would rework his deal with Kansas City or what. Turns out that they couldn't come to an agreement on a reworked deal. Frank Clark is heading to free agency, and just by the demeanor of the coaches when they spoke, or they released a statement. The Chiefs put out like a thank you Frank Clark thing and a farewell video, and I don't know, this just kind of seems like the end of Frank Clark, man. I think they're treating it like that. They know that he's not coming back, and I'm also okay with that because this move saves them a lot of money. I understand Frank Clark had his moments in the playoffs, but still ultimately a disappointing player, an overpaid player, an overrated player, and I think the Chiefs can easily upgrade here and not have to spend as much money as they were going to be spending on Frank Clark. The move does, releasing Frank Clark, that move does count $7 million against their cap. They're still on the hook for $7 million and dead cap, but they save about $20 million. So this was the right move for the future, and I don't think Frank Clark comes back. I think somebody else will pay him, and I think if you just read the tea leaves and the way that the Chiefs are treating this, they know Frank Clark is gone. Next on the list, we got Juju Smith-Schuster. This is probably the Chiefs' biggest free agent, right behind Orlando Brown. Juju Smith-Schuster was an integral part of the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl run. He was their leading wide receiver this year in receiving yards. He would be an ideal player to bring back. I think everyone likes him. He's a great teammate. He's a great fit for the offense, and I believe another offseason in Kansas City, and Juju Smith-Schuster could have a really big year next year. The thing with Juju is that the wide receiver market this year is really weak. And so Juju is going to be one of the better names in free agency when it comes to wide receivers, which means a team that's desperate for a wide receiver could very easily overpay for Juju Smith-Schuster. And I've seen some people grimace at the Chiefs maybe paying Juju Smith-Schuster like $12 to $15 million per year. I think that range is actually pretty fair for Juju when you consider the wide receiver market. That's a really fair deal. And if we're talking about giving Juju Smith-Schuster maybe like the Marquez Valdez-Scantling deal, that's a steal. And Juju Smith-Schuster is a really good player, and I really believe he would have been a 1,000-yard receiver if not for getting knocked out by Andre Cisco and some unlucky injuries. But anything more than that, and yeah, you're probably looking at losing Juju Smith-Schuster. You don't want to overpay him to keep him, and I'm sure there will be some teams interested. Ideally, in an ideal world, you want to keep Juju Smith-Schuster. We'll just have to see how his market goes, but I think everyone agrees that they would like to have Juju back. Next up, we got Carlos Dunlap. Carlos Dunlap was a really, really solid signing for Kansas City as a depth defensive end. He put in some really good snaps here, had some big moments, made plays. He was just rock solid on that defensive line. He's 34 years old. He just won his first Super Bowl. He's been in the league 13 years now? This might be it for Carlos Dunlap, man. He might just ride off into the sunset, and I wouldn't blame him at all. I don't know. I think he might be done. I mean, he was on a 1-year deal here. Again, 34 years old. I think he might just retire. If he doesn't, though, I wouldn't be upset if they brought him back, but I definitely think that the Chiefs would like to bring in some new players, and I'm not quite sure where Carlos Dunlap would fit in with that. So we'll see, but my best guess is that Carlos Dunlap rides off into the sunset. All right, then we got defensive tackle Jerrick McKinnon. Jerrick McKinnon is only 26 years old still. He came back on a 1-year deal for Kansas City after his rookie contract expired. And I'll be honest, I feel like Jerrick McKinnon took a step back this year. If I'm correct, his snap count in Kansas City also drastically declined this year. And that was even after the Deshaun Wharton injury. And so I think the Chiefs move on from Jerrick McKinnon, and I think he's a one-dimensional player, and the one dimension that he's good in, he's kind of declined. And so I think the Chiefs move on here, and he goes somewhere else. I think that's a pretty easy one. Coming up on Andrew Wiley, right tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. He will hit the free agent market, and I will be very interested to see how the rest of the league values Andrew Wiley. A lot of Chiefs fans want to upgrade Andrew Wiley. I would like to see them upgrade Andrew Wiley too. But if he's not too expensive, I don't know why you don't bring him back just as insurance, because he was really solid. You won a Super Bowl with him. And you know what? Andrew Wiley stepped up in a position where I don't think the Chiefs ever planned for him to be. They never wanted him to be their starting right tackle. They tried with Darian Kennard. They tried with Lucas Niang. They had Mike Remmers last year. He got hurt. This was just never what the Chiefs envisioned for Andrew Wiley, and yet he stepped into that role, and he did about as well as you could hope for. And so, I respect Andrew Wiley for that. And now because of his Super Bowl and playoff experience, other teams may jump in to grab Andrew Wiley, the solid veteran right tackle, as how the rest of the league is going to view him now. And so he might have a little bit of a market. We'll see, though. But if it's not too expensive, I'd like to see the Chiefs bring back Andrew Wiley, I think. And then still, if you like someone in the draft, you pick them up too. And actually, let me just clarify, I'm not vying for Andrew Wiley to come back. If there is another right tackle free agent the Chiefs really like, that's an upgrade over Wiley. Okay, yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying that if he's not too expensive, you bring him back as a stopgap, and you probably draft somebody to eventually take over for him. We'll just have to see with his market, though. Next is running back Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones, I think we all hoped a little bit more for him when Kansas City first signed him. At first, it was an exciting addition. It's like, okay, Ronald Jones, yeah, this is an exciting player. He had 1,000 yards with Tampa one time. At least I'm pretty sure. At the very least, he had 1,000 yards from scrimmage 1 year with Tampa. But I thought this would be a good number 2 running back. Never really happened. Never really cracked the rotation. Got a few carries late in the season. But I definitely think he'll probably like to go somewhere else where he'll get more opportunity. If you guys remember, he tweeted something halfway through last season about how he wanted to be released because he wanted to go somewhere. And I really didn't blame the guy, because there's no reason for Kansas City to hold him hostage the way they did. I know that they promised him an opportunity later in the season, and then Clyde got hurt, and he got his opportunity, which was a couple carries at the end of the season, but still, I felt bad for him. I thought he should have been utilized. a little bit more, and I think he could be utilized somewhere else. So good luck to Ronald Jones in the future, but no way he comes back to Kansas City. Next is fullback Michael Burton. I would have to double check on the stats here, but it feels like this is the least that Andy Reid has used a fullback in his offense in a very long time. Michael Burton, I almost forgot the guy was on the team. If the Chiefs really want a fullback, I guess, okay, bring him back for $1 million like they've done with every fullback. So they did with Anthony Sherman. They just brought him back on a series of one-year deals every year for $1 million or maybe a little bit more, whatever. You know what I mean. If they want to do it with Michael Burton, fine. Or if they want to get rid of the fullback and use it on a different player or utilize the roster spot differently, I'm fine with that too. Next up is tight end Blake Bell. Blake Bell actually became a healthy inactive towards the end of the season, and I think that was pretty telling. I think the Chiefs now have developed enough confidence in both Noah Gray and Jody Fortson. Jody Fortson I'll have to get to later too because I believe he's on this list. But I think they'd bring him back before they brought Blake Bell back. When you're getting healthy scratches, that's usually not a good sign. And for the longest time, the Chiefs just valued his blocking ability so much, and that's why they brought him back. But I think they have enough guys that they trust that they don't really need Blake Bell. So those are my thoughts there. Next up, we got running back Jerrick McKinnon. And Jerrick McKinnon, I was on the Jerrick McKinnon train from the day that they signed him a couple years ago. I said, this guy has got something. He's got a little bit of juice. This is what the Chiefs need at running back. They hardly used him at all in 2021 until the playoffs finally. And then they finally realized that they probably should be using him a lot more. 2022 was completely different for him. They utilized him a lot more. He really gained Patrick Mahomes' trust in this offense. He was a security blanket. They also loved using him on third down. I think they definitely try to bring him back. Worth noting, though, that he's about to be 31 years old. We know that running backs tend to decline around that age, and Jerrick McKinnon is also a guy who's experienced a lot of injuries in his career, and at some point, he's going to start slowing down. I definitely think the Chiefs will probably inject some youth into the running back position and bring in a new face late in the draft or maybe somewhere else in free agency too. But I definitely think they would like to have Jerrick McKinnon back, and I totally understand it, and I hope it happens. All right. This is one of the more interesting players on the list. We got wide receiver Mecole Hardman, just 24 years old, hitting free agency for the first time. And it seems like Mecole Hardman is gone. Just the way that he's been talking, it feels like he knows that he has suitors. And I know for a fact he has suitors. And again, this wide receiver market is not very strong in free agency. Mecole Hardman's going to be one of the better players in it. He's also very young. He's got the speed and the big playability that teams will value. And his market value right now in Spot Track is like 11 or 12 million per year. And at that price, I'm not doing it, man. I'm not doing that for Mecole Hardman. He's too frustrating of a player for me to bring him back at that price. He put in his time here. He made some big plays and all that, but I don't think he's worth keeping at that number. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a better receiver. The Chiefs are paying him about the same as what Mecole Hardman's market value is right now. And if they're going to bring back Juju, there's just not enough money left over there. I know some Chiefs fans are hopeful that his market just isn't what he thought it was, and he comes back to Kansas City on a one-year sweetheart deal to prove it one more time, and then he'll hit free agency. I don't see that happening. I think he will get paid by somebody else. So I think Mecole Hardman is done in Kansas City. Next, we got safety Deion Bush. The Chiefs signed him to be their fourth safety and a good special teamer. It's exactly what he was. I wouldn't mind if they brought him back. I mean, he's getting his role. Good special teamer. I'm cool with it. All right, next we got safety Juan Thornhill. Juan Thornhill never really turned into what Kansas City fans hoped for after his rookie season. Had that torn ACL. Seemed like he was never able to come back to the Juan Thornhill that we saw his rookie season. It felt like his potential was through the roof, but that never really happened. He's still solid, and he had a good year this year, but I think he's going to cost a little bit too much to retain. I think the Chiefs are bracing to lose him. I think there's cheaper veteran free agent safeties that they can get, or they could just grab somebody in the draft. There's no reason to pay Juan Thornhill a bunch of money. They got guys they like, and they also drafted Brian Cook for a reason. and I think he'll take a step next year. So I think Juan Thornhill becomes expendable. Sad to see him go. I mean, I wish the draft pick would have worked out a little bit better. I wish Juan Thornhill, his career would have gone differently, but it is what it is, and the Chiefs have a plan. Next is wide receiver Justin Watson, who surprisingly was pretty solid. I mean, he had some frustrating drops. He got a lot of snaps for what seems like no reason over guys like Sky Moore, and the Chiefs have talked about how they envision a bigger role for Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney next year and all that stuff. And if that's the case, well, then you can't be playing Justin Watson so many snaps. Justin Watson's about to become 28. I couldn't even tell you how many career receiving yards he has. It's not very many. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I mean, he was a good wide receiver 5. But I think the Chiefs might go in a different direction here because I think there's a pretty good possibility not only that they bring back Juju, but that they add somebody, another veteran or a draft pick. And if they do that, then I'm not sure where Justin Watson fits in. I know Mahomes liked him, and he was a sneaky good pickup last offseason, but it's whatever. It's whatever. I mean, if you want these other guys to take the next step, then you can't bring Justin Watson back and taking up so many snaps. Next, we got defensive tackle Colin Saunders. Colin Saunders was a guy that I was really hard on for his first few years. I was like, when is this guy ever going to do anything? And then this year, when he got his opportunity after Deshaun Wharton went down with an injury, he really stepped up. He provided some pass rush. He actually became a really good run defender, too. And I would love to bring him back, and I'll be interested to see what his market is. Right now, SpotTrack projects him to get a 2-year, $12 million contract from somebody. That's like really on the borderline for me as far as being too expensive to bring back and wanting to bring back. Saunders is a solid player. I don't know if the Chiefs will pay him 2 years, $12 million. We'll just have to see. I would like to have him back, though. Good energy guy. We'll see, man. We'll see. Next is punter Tommy Townsend. He's a restricted free agent. I think we expect him to come back, and given that he's a restricted free agent, the Chiefs are in control here. Nothing to worry about there. Then the Chiefs' other restricted free agent is Deshaun Wharton, and Deshaun Wharton tore his ACL early in the season, which was really unfortunate because he was really coming on, and he was one of the better pickups by Brett Veach, undrafted free agent out of Missouri S&T. Missouri S&T is not known for their football, but Deshaun Wharton came in here and tore it up as a rookie, got better each of the last couple of seasons, and I don't think I'll have much of a market, especially with the ACL tear that he sustained, so I think this is a pretty easy one. I think the Chiefs bring him back, and he won't cost too much. Now we finally got tight end Jody Fortson. Jody Fortson, he's been solid contributor. He doesn't have a lot of career catches, but in the few career catches that he has, most of them have been touchdowns. Good red zone threat, great teammate. Reed and Mahomes like him. I expect him to be back, and I don't think he'll cost very much either. Then there's quarterback Shane Michel. I should also mention him. Him along with Jody Fortson are both exclusive restricted free agents or exclusive rights free agents, and so that just means that they're players with fewer than 3 accrued seasons, and they're on an expiring contract. Basically, the player. So if the Chiefs offer them a 1-year contract at the league minimum, the player can negotiate or cannot negotiate with other teams. So basically, the Chiefs are in control here. Anyone that they want to bring back out of the ERFAs, they're going to be back. But nonetheless, Shane Michel, this is a guy that the Chiefs have invested a lot in. They've protected him multiple times from being signed by other teams. Chad Henne just retired, who was their longtime backup quarterback. I think they've been grooming Shane Michel to eventually be a high upside backup quarterback, and at some point you got to let him play or else there's no reason for keeping him, or you got to let him become the backup and earn that role. So now's the year to do it. I mean, he's been here for a few years. You protected him. No reason to do that if you don't have a real plan for him. And I think with Chad Henne retiring, that opens up a perfect opportunity for Shane Michel. Not to say that the Chiefs don't bring in another veteran quarterback to compete, but I think this is where Shane Michel steps in and becomes the new backup and gives the Chiefs sort of a Jimmy Garoppolo situation like the Patriots had with Tom Brady, where they can maybe flip him later on if he shows something. Almost getting to the end here, we have tackle Prince Tega Wanogho. He actually stepped in for an injured Andrew Wiley earlier this year. Looked all right. I'm sure the Chiefs would be interested in bringing him back as a depth tackle. He's still only 25 years old. I think he has some upside. And, I think he'll be here for training camp and preseason and all that. We'll see what happens. But I think the Chiefs probably bring him back. And then I'll just go into the last one right here. Nick Allegretti, guard. He was basically the Chiefs' sixth offensive lineman this year. Anytime there was an injury on the interior or anything like that, Nick Allegretti was the first guy off the bench. Anytime they brought in an extra lineman, Allegretti was usually the guy. And I think Kansas City really likes him. I don't think he's going to have a strong market of going anywhere else. So I think the Chiefs would probably bring back Nick Allegretti. And that's it. Those are all the Kansas City Chiefs and pending free agents. My opinions on them, what I think will happen with them. With all that being said, though, I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on all the Kansas City Chiefs and pending free agents? Are there any that I said that you maybe agree with, disagree with? Let me know. Who are you wanting them to bring back? Would love to hear from you guys. There's a lot of them. This is a big offseason for Kansas City. They just won the Super Bowl. I know people would like to keep mostly everybody, but that's just not the way it works. I think we'll see some shakeup, but yeah, guys, that's all I got. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you can see all my new videos as soon as they come out and you're notified. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, where I've been cranking out content recently on all sorts of stuff. I appreciate y'all. I will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!